We've shown you some pretty amazing and expensive fidget spinners in some of our previous videos, but if you're more of the do-it-yourself type, you might be wondering how you can make your very own fidget spinner. Sure, if you have a 3D printer, it's a snap, but there are other methods you can use to make spinners that are truly incredible. If you already have a fidget spinner, use the hand not holding it to press that subscribe button. And don't forget to join our notification squad so you're the first to know when we roll out a new video. Giant fidget spinner. Okay, so maybe this fidget spinner isn't exactly going to be helpful when you're trying to pay attention in class, but it sure is awesome to look at. Instructable's user Make It Extreme created a massive fidget spinner that weighs over 80 pounds. He used a lathe to create a metal cone so that the spinner can be spun while resting on the ground. He then used a flywheel from an old fitness machine to create the frame for the spinner. When the metal piece rests on the ground, the wheel can be independently spun. It can reach extremely fast speeds, and the spinning motion helps balance the metal cone on the bottom. Its creator even tried to stand on it while it was spinning, but found it impossible to balance for more than a few seconds. He believes that with a much heavier whirligig, it would be possible to keep his balance for far longer. Since this giant spinner already weighs 80 pounds, we can't imagine how huge the next one will be if he decides to perfect the design. Sure, this one may be a bit too cumbersome to drag around with you, and you can't use it with one hand, but it's an impressive creation nonetheless. Budget spinner. Here is a spinner that you don't need nearly as much time, money, or skill to make. In fact, it's a great low-cost option for a basic spinner, but it still has a lot of room for customization. You'll need some cardboard, a toothpick, and some coins. You can try experimenting with different thicknesses of the cardboard and different sized coins until you find one that works just right for you. You'll also want to have some strong glue and scissors on hand for the construction. You can simply cut the cardboard into a dual bar, tri-bar, or even quad bar design. Glue a coin to each of the arms of the spinner to give it some weight so that it spins. You'll want to use the same size coin for each arm so that it's properly balanced. The bigger the coin you use, the more momentum your spinner will gain when you flick it. Cut a circular piece of cardboard out and glue it to the middle of the spinner so that you can grip it more easily. After you give it a spin, don't forget to decorate it to your liking. This might be the easiest and cheapest spinner around, even if it isn't the sturdiest. Magnetic spinner. This awesome spinner utilizes the power of magnets in order to produce a very cool spin. You'll need some bearings, a large circular magnet with a hole in the middle, a magnetic strip, and a tool to cut the magnets into its proper shape. Start by cutting the magnetic strip into 4 smaller pieces. These will act as a spacer between the bearings and the circular magnet. Place the bearings inside the hole in the large circular magnet and use the small pieces of magnet that you just cut up to adhere it to the circular magnet. You'll want to make sure that they are evenly spaced apart so that it maintains proper balance. Now is where the real fun part begins. You've created a great base, so now it's time to customize it. You can use smaller circular magnets to line the outside, or attach various objects to the exterior. Because you're using magnets, you can swap things out until you find the best configuration for you. Try arranging some metal nuts and bolts around the outer circle. Think of all the crazy combinations of metal and magnets you can come up with using this design. Batman fidget spinner. Batman himself may claim to be the knight, but this Batman fidget spinner features LEDs, so you'll be able to light up the night when you use this. You'll need some clay polymer in order to make the Batman logo. Knead up the clay to soften it before rolling it out with a rolling pin. Cut it into the shape of the Batman symbol and bake it in the oven. Make sure to let it cool properly before you move on to the next step of this process. The next bit is a little more complex. You need to take the battery holder and bed the leads of the LEDs to meet the battery holder pins. Solder them together so that they stay in place. To make your bearing more efficient, remove the rubber cover and clean it with a WD-40 solution to remove any traces of grease. Clean it off with alcohol before you use it in your spinner. Drill a hole in the middle of the Batman logo and insert the bearing, making sure it's a tight fit. Glue the battery holders onto the spinner and press it into position. Put one on the edge of each wing. Use 2 stainless steel dome nuts or a grub screw in order to make the spinner handle. Now you're all set to give it a spin. PVC pipe. This fidget spinner is a bit more heavy-duty than the previous one, so you'll need some serious tools to make it. This fidget spinner is made with a 25mm PVC pipe. You'll also need an appropriate bearing and 2 glass marbles. Pick out the coolest marbles you can find to be embedded in this awesome spinner. To get the pipe in the right shape, you'll need to heat it up with a blowtorch to soften the metal, and then flatten it to get the proper shape. Make sure to use proper safety equipment, including goggles and a respirator. Drill holes for the marbles and a bearing. You can use the drill to trim the pipe and add decorative touches if you'd like. Heat up the ends of the pipe once more so they open up enough for you to insert the marbles, one on each end. Close the ends enough that the marbles stay in place. All you have to do now is pop in the bearing and give it a spin. This one requires a lot of care and special equipment to make, but it's incredibly sturdy and looks truly incredible. Zip tie. Okay, maybe the last one was a little bit out of your skill range or your price range, but this next spinner is something that should cost you very little, and you may even have some of the materials in your house already. You'll need 3 bearings, and then you'll need an assortment of zip ties. If you're recycling bearings from something else, like old rollerblade wheels, make sure to clean them up before you start your project. You can purchase zip ties from your local hardware store, or you might even have some laying around your house. Try to find ones in your favorite color. You'll need one that is at least 6 inches long, and then 2 smaller ones no longer than 3 inches. Line up your 3 bearings and wrap the longest zip tie around all the bearings and cinch it closed. You want to be careful that the bearings stay in a straight line, so close it very carefully. Take the smaller zip ties and wrap them around the spaces between the bearings to prevent them from moving around. Cinch them tightly to hold them in place, and that's all there is to it. You just made a cool fidget spinner in almost no time at all. Clay fidget spinner. This fidget spinner uses clay, much like the Batman spinner. However, it's far simpler to put together and uses a tri-tip design instead of a dual bar. You can choose whatever color you like, or you can even opt for some clay that glows in the dark. You'll need a bearing and some marbles as well. Anyone who has ever made anything out of clay knows that rolling the clay with your hands so it looks like a snake is the easiest thing possible. And if that's as far as your clay working skill level extends, then you're in luck, because once you roll it out, you just have to line up the outside of the bearing and the marbles with it. You can use a toothpick to trim off any excess and make the edges look nice and neat. Arrange the marbles around the bearing so that they form a triangle. When you place your spinner on a baking sheet, place a small piece of cardboard underneath the bearing so that it doesn't sag. Bake it, let it cool, and give it a spin. Duct tape spinner. Is there anything that you can't use duct tape for? At The Hub, we believe that it can be used for just about everything under the sun, and this includes making a fidget spinner. Like the previous spinner, this will be a tri-tip design, and you'll need a bearing and 3 marbles. Instead of using clay to hold the marbles and bearings together, you're going to be using the magic of duct tape. Duct tape comes in tons of different colors and patterns, so make sure you take your time picking out a really great tape. The challenging part here will be to make sure that you don't make the spinner too bulky by overusing your duct tape. Yes, there is such a thing. Pre-cutting your strips can help you control the length and width when you put the spinner together. The easiest method involves using a craft mat and an X-Acto knife to maintain precision while cutting the tape to the proper length. Make certain that you place the marbles equidistantly to one another before you stick them to the bearing, or the balance will be off and you won't get that perfect spin. Wooden spinner. While we've seen a lot of different fidget spinners made of many different materials, there is something about wooden spinners that just always looks so classy. And if you have the proper tools, you can even make your own. The great thing about this is that you can make it in any shape you like, from a simple dual bar spinner to a complex quad tip spinner. You can even make one using excess scrap wood if you're trying to save a few bucks, or if you just love the idea of recycling. If you're using an unfinished piece of wood, use sandpaper to smooth down any rough edges. You don't want to get a splinter when you flick your spinner. Once you cut your piece of wood in the shape you want to use a drill to make a hole in the center so that you can insert a bearing into it. You want to make sure it's a really snug fit. You'll need to use some weights on each end of your spinner, and you can choose your weight based on your preferences. Like the bearing, you'll need to drill a hole for each weight and push them in so that they fit snugly against the wood. Once you're done, you can paint it or finish it until it looks the way you prefer it to. Fidget light. Have you ever had a skeptical friend tell you that there's no point in making a fidget spinner and you're wasting your time? Well, if you make one of these unusual fidget lights, you'll be enjoying the bright glow of a lamp while still keeping your hand busy. Talk about a bright idea. This fidget spinner utilizes the wheel hub of an old bicycle for the part that you spin. It's a surprising satisfying spin to fidget with. You'll need to drill a hole in the center of a steel rod before placing the wheel hub into the end. Then glue a thinner metal rod into the hole you drilled with some epoxy. This metal rod will be attached to a stand to hold the light spinner in place while you play with it. Wire up the electrical fittings and screw it into the steel rod. Then you'll have to select a light bulb and screw it into the top. You can customize your lamp spinner with different bulbs or by changing up the base. You can even make it look a little less modern by using wood instead of metal. Then all you have to do is turn on the light and get your hand ready to spin. Have you had any luck making your own custom fidget spinner? Or did you see one on our list that you really want to try to make? Tell us about it in our comment section. We love hearing from our viewers, especially if it's about fidget spinners. Thanks for watching our video, and don't forget to give us a like and subscribe. Bye for now.